Chapter 11. The Witch. Thaddred won the joust, of course. No one was surprised. As soon as his last opponent was lying in the dirt, nobles rushed to collect their bets. According to Danger, bets involving Thaddred usually were regarding by how much he would win, not if. Amira cast the archduke a stern look as Thaddred cheered at another victory. No one is that good. Thaddred is? How can he be so much better than the people he fights? Amira countered. A blade goes dull without a whetstone. How can he stay so good if he never faces a challenge? I don't know, but he does. Amira rolled her eyes at that. No one, not even Adros Nefane, the most powerful Kadrahan in memory, had been undefeated. When the time came to crown Thaddred the winner, Vesha stepped aside and looked pointedly to Amira. The assassin's throat tightened. For the love of all the gods, surely the mad woman wasn't about to ask Amira to joust. Lady Amira, the empress said, as bride of our future emperor, will you crown our victor? Amira didn't see the harm in obeying, and nor did she see a safe way to disobey. The assassin stepped up to take the empress's place before Thaddred. A squire knelt with the crown on a velvet pillow, just like the others. All she had to do was place it on Thaddred's head. She wasn't sure how one could mess that up, but she was fairly sure she could find a way. Amira took the crown and raised it over the sweaty knight's head. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching her every move, weighing every breath and blink. Thaddred kept his face lowered. Amira wished she could have seen his expression as she settled the golden circlet around his brow. Rise, Victor, Amira said, imitating the words she'd heard Vesha speak 4 or 5 times now. I thank you, milady, Thaddred said. He grasped and kissed the back of her hand, as the previous champions had done with Vesha. The knight stood, a little stiffer than the others had, favoring his bad leg. Still holding her hand, he thrust it into the air, and the crowd broke into cheers so loud that the horses whickered in terror across the lists. He touched her only with the hand that wore his Ka-absorbing ring. Amira wondered if that was coincidence. Thaddred bowed and waved before turning back to her with a grin, lapping up the applause like a tomcat lapping up cream. Congratulations, Victor, Amira said, not even trying to lessen the sarcasm that dripped from her voice. Thaddred only grinned broader. He kissed her right cheek, then the other, as one would a sister. Congratulations, Victor, he snickered back. Daindrath slid between them. He slung an arm around Thaddred's shoulders, then Amira's waist. She was acutely aware of her side pressing against him, and the warmth and solidness of his body. Daindrath hugged both of them. My champions, he said, preening like the general of an undefeated legion. He ruffled Thaddred's hair and kissed Amira's forehead. Amira frowned. You're pleased? Of course. Why wouldn't I be? Amira had gone against his wishes earlier. She could think of several reasons for him to be displeased. Forgive me, my son, but your bride and I must prepare for the feast tonight. Vesha came up from behind the archduke, Darrigan close at her back. Daindrath's smile faltered as he released Amira and Thaddred. Yes, mother. Never fear. I shall return her quickly, Vesha assured him. We'll see you in an hour or so. Tell your bride to come with me, and behave. Daindrath shot a look to Darrigan behind Vesha. Several tortuously long heartbeats passed before he looked straight at Amira and said, Do as I've told you. Amira almost frowned. That wasn't really a command. She already had to do as he told her. Darrigan's mouth tightened and a muscle clenched in his cheek. Stop it, Darrigan, Vesha clipped. It's not like we'll be alone. Amira allowed Vesha to take her arm in a familial gesture that didn't feel quite right. Yet, what choice did she have? Danger? Amira looked to him as the Empress tugged her toward the steps off the raised platform. Yes. Dangerith didn't look any more pleased about her leaving than she was. The way his brow pinched in concern, the way his whole body shifted toward her. He wouldn't make her go with the Empress and Darrigan if she asked not to. Past the archduke, she noticed the throngs of nobles milling about, dispersing as the orderlies took down the rails, the stands, the bunting, and removed the paraphernalia of the joust from the field. All were absorbed in their own affairs, but Amira could still feel hundreds of eyes watching her from sidelong glances and over the shoulders of their companions. She couldn't afford weakness in front of them. If they saw her pull out of the Empress's grasp, if they saw even a hint of vulnerability, Amira forced a smile. I will see you at the feast, Your Highness. She inclined her head to Dangerith, and he inclined his head in turn. I look forward to it. As Amira walked away with Vesha, she realized she looked forward to it as well. And not just because she'd get a reprieve from Vesha. The Empress led her the long way back to the palace, taking a walking path that looped through an avenue lined with shrubs, skirting near the game park, and then back through the long way to the main leisure portions of the palace. In her paranoid mind, Amira wondered if Vesha meant to have Darrigan finish her off and leave her body in the game park for a family of boars. Not likely, but she wouldn't put it past the Empress. Vesha offered small talk about the tournament and its attendees while Amira managed to force a response every 100 words or so. Despite the cordial words, the hairs on the back of Amira's neck stood on end, and she couldn't ignore the looming presence of Darrigan at her flank. They reached a dome of latticed stone that spanned a salarium at least 3 times the size of the lists back on the field. The lattice cast geometric patterns over the massive stone-hewn pond, like lace made of shadows. Flat footpaths crisscrossed the pond in concentric shapes, the mirrored reflection of the pattern above. The design triggered something in Amira's memory, something deep and hidden, yet vaguely familiar. The water rose so high that even the slightest ripple sent splashes over the walkways. Water lilies floated on the smooth surface. Flashes of red and white koi circled below. Amira stared. The only sounds were that of the Empress and her guards and the distant trickle of water. Amira couldn't guess where the sound of water came from. She could see no disturbance on the glassy surface of the pond. The famed Lily Salarium of Manadra, Vesha said. Amira wouldn't have needed the Empress's explanation to know what she was seeing. It's beautiful. Emperor Tristan gave it to me as a wedding gift, she said. I had it renovated not long after he died, but my husband built it first. He was a harsh man, too ambitious for his own good, as you well know. There was a note of accusation in the last few words. He could never do anything part way. With him, everything was all or nothing. If he hated with his very soul. If he loved. Vesha trailed off, frowning. Have you heard the story? Some of it, Your Majesty, Amira answered. I know people say he cared greatly for you. Yes, Vesha agreed. He promised me that he would make me his empress. I didn't believe him. She smiled then, an absent and sad smile. I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised that my son risked offending the whole empire to have the woman he wanted. His father very nearly started a war for me. More than a few men died as it was, but the emperor didn't care. He would have burned cities in my name if that's what it took. Amira returned her attention to the solarium. There was an elegant beauty, a sense of wealth displayed and enjoyed, yet depths beyond the eye's perception. It was so much like the empress herself. When we met for the signing of our marriage contract, I mentioned that I missed the water gardens of my mother's country. This was his response. The assassin's jaw almost dropped. Such extravagance. According to rumors, the Lily Salarium had taken 200 master stonemasons and their apprentices, working night and day 6 months to complete. Tristan gave me a crown, an empire, and the chance to leave a legacy most men never dream of, much less women. Vesha's fingers tightened on Amira's arm, her nails pressed into the bandage beneath the new sleeve that the servants had brought to replace the one Amira had stained with blood. And no one has threatened that chance more than a certain tribe of sorceresses to the north. Amira kept her jaw slack, eyes fixed straight ahead. That was the trick of it. Appear occupied with something else. Her mouth went dry, and a tightness spread through her chest. She was keenly aware of Darrigan at her back. I have fought to keep this empire thriving in the face of vying nobles, rebellions, insurrections, through my husband's ailment, and now my son's. Vesha's grip tightened. When I die, it is unlikely that Daendrith will be able to rule. At least not consistently. Not unless we change something. Amira's mouth tightened. Why not? You know why not. Vesha's voice hardened. No, she said. I don't. You know of his curse? Every curse can be broken, Amira said, citing the rule almost without thinking. And every cloud can bear rain. That doesn't mean they will. Vesha inhaled. I have broken my own bones to build this empire into something that can last. Amira wasn't sure what the Empress meant by that, but she wasn't about to interrupt. I have not paid the price for this empire only to have it crumble in a generation. What are you saying? Amira looked squarely to Vesha. I did not rise to power alone, Amira. No one does. Amira searched the Empress's face, still not understanding. This all comes at a cost, Vesha said, waving vaguely at the air. Have you wondered how I have kept the empire stable for nigh on 20 years? How I have ensured good harvests, healthy livestock, gentle winters and fertile summers? Shaking her head, Amira's thoughts whirred in 1,000 different directions at once. You rule well. I do, Vesha agreed. But the weather? She arched one eyebrow. There hasn't been an outbreak of cankerworms in the crops for years. No droughts, and only a handful of floods within the Empire's borders. A sinking feeling began in Amira's gut as they reached the dais at the center of the gardens. Vesha didn't stop, leading her gingerly up the steps to the very top. That takes power, Amira. Power that no man or woman can give you. Amira looked around her from the top, and the pieces began clicking in place. She recognized the design of stones and the mirrored design in the lattices above. Highly stylized and embellished, but still recognizable. This whole garden was a witch's wheel, a conduit for shaping spells. Not to mention it was surrounded by still water, a veritable echo chamber for Ka. Looking closer, Amira realized that the latticework and the mirrored design below were of different stone than the pond's giant basin. It was hardly noticeable, but the walkways and the overhead pattern were hewn from paler rock. Vesha had renovated her wedding gift into a tool for magic. But Amira looked back to her future mother-in-law, fear and confusion tangling her tongue. You're not a sorceress. There were none of the telltale signs, no excess ka sticking to the empress's body. Not naturally, Vesha responded. Not by blood. Amira shook her head. What then? Some are born with their gifts, Vesha said. Others must take them. Pulling her arm free of Vesha, Amira surveyed the other woman, the empress's slightly tilted head and playful, almost girlish smile. Something was wrong. So very wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Santi, Vesha said to the air. Show yourself. A shape materialized at the corner of Amira's vision. Jumping, she choked back a scream as her hands ached for a knife, a sword, even a club to defend herself. The thing was vaguely humanoid, with stretched and bent limbs. It was pale, paler than a corpse, with blue veins standing out along its almost translucent skin. Eyes like glass orbs studied Amira, those familiar, fiery red slits taking her in. A forked tongue flicked over the thing's bloodless lips as it studied Amira. Knobby spines ridged its back to the end of its twitching tail. The creature's caw flared into Amira's awareness, that same hot, ashy sensation she'd felt from Ka-Is when he'd taken over Dangerous. How might I serve you, my empress? The thing had a voice that made Amira's heart shake and drew cold sweat along her back. It stooped into a bow, its elongated fingers splaying on the stone. This is Santi, my familiar, Vesha said. Amira shot a look to Darrigan. The other Kadrahan made eye contact with her, his mouth tight and one hand on his sword, though Amira didn't know what good that would do against the creature. I tried to tell you, his gaze seemed to say. I tried to warn you. Whirling back to the creature, Amira forced down her fear enough that she could speak. What is it? The creature hissed. She, Vesha corrected. Santi prefers to be called she. Santi's tail continued to twitch, those two large eyes resting on Amira. She is a Sithra'ul, the empress explained, and she serves me. Sithra'ul served no one, Amira grated. She was no expert, but she knew that much. Vesha ignored her. I learned much in the search of a cure for my son. Those first few years after my husband's death, we saw no less than 5 rebellions. Raiders ravaged every province, and it seemed every other week. Some minor king was invading his neighbors to expand his own dominion. Amira remained still. Santi was a grotesque and mutant horror that Amira hated looking at. But she wouldn't dare take her eyes off the thing. Not for a second. Then I found an obscure book, a grimoire. Amira tore her gaze from the Sithra'ul for just a moment to shoot Vesha an accusing look. Don't look at me like that. You have no idea the decisions I had to make. Vesha's nostrils flared. Santi and her kin have protected the empire, guarded its borders, brought the rains and kept away even the plagues. The empire thrives in every way. At what cost? Amira whispered, a sick feeling in her gut. Demons didn't help out of altruism. There had to be something in it for them. Our bond allows Santi access to this plane, outside the Dread Marches. It's different from a possession, so she doesn't have a corporeal body, but can still move through and influence our world. It's the same with the others who serve me. Amira's head spun, and she could hardly believe it. You're a witch? She whispered. Not a sorceress. Not one who wove the power of the natural world into tapestries of spells, but a witch. One who had no innate power, but gathered hers by manipulating creatures of the other world to do her bidding. A sorceress and a witch. There is much bad blood between our kind, Vesha admitted. Never fear. I hold no grudges. There had been a time when the sons of sorceresses had formed a knightly order, the Hell Cleavers, to eradicate witches and their familiars from the continent. It had been generations ago, but stories of their battles had lived on in legend. Why have you left Ka'is in danger then? Amira demanded, indignation sparking in her chest so that she didn't even worry about admitting that she knew the demon's name. You've left your own son. You think I haven't tried, Vesha hissed, but no. Ka'is made a contract with the Istavari sorceresses, Amira, your mothers. They paid the price to allow Ka'is to possess my husband and his heirs. I cannot break a contract that belongs to another, only add to it. In other words, Vesha could only make things worse. Amira might have screamed in rage if she hadn't had Santhi watching with those hellish red eyes, almost identical to Ka'is. I have a contract prepared for Ka'is, Vesha said, speaking slowly, as if she were thinking over every word twice. A contract that would force him to seek the good of the Empire. And what is the price of this contract? Amira demanded. Vesha shrugged. Every contract with the Sithraul requires a sacrifice. The Empress looked away. But the Empire is worth it. Millions of lives. She stared vacantly toward a water lily, her eyes unfocused and glassy. For them to live in peace and safety. Can any price be too high? Instantly, Amira wanted to respond with a resounding yes. Nothing good could come of striking bargains with the fiends of the spirit world, but she doubted the wisdom of saying as much. Especially with one of those fiends watching. We can find a way to turn this curse into a boon, Vesha said, returning her attention to the ghastly pale Sithraul. You're dismissed, Santhi. The demoness hissed, tongue flicking over needle-like teeth, before she vanished from sight as quickly as she had appeared. Amira tensed, watching the spot where the demon had vanished. So you see, you must choose, darling. Vesha cast the other woman a smile that was almost sad. Will you be my ally, or will we be enemies? I belong to Daindrath, Amira said flatly, as if it were hardly worth repeating. He is my liege lord. Only if you choose as much. You spoke of Daindrath's curse, Amira said softly. Don't you know of mine? Vesha smiled. You're bound to Daindrath, not the demon. Amira considered the implications for a moment. You think he will lose himself to the creature? Vesha remained silent. He's controlling it, Amira said, surprising herself at her own forcefulness. She bit back her words, determined not to reveal that she silenced Ka'is. If Vesha didn't already know that, Amira wasn't going to be the one to tell her. You think I don't know? Vesha snapped. It makes no difference. She grabbed Amira's arm and spun her around so that they were facing. I stood beside my husband as he descended into madness that grew with each passing day until he ordered a dagger into his heart. I have watched my only child battle for rule over his own body for more than half of his life. I have wasted 12 fortunes and more trying to find a cure. My Kadrahan have scoured every corner of the Empire and beyond, and there is no cure. Vesha's nostrils flared. There is no cure, she repeated, flatly this time, as if she were reminding herself. Daindrath will lose himself, and when he does, there must be someone to take his place. The world spun, and Amira was sure she would be sick. He won't. The words were almost a whimper. We'll find a way. Vesha's face softened for a moment before the steel mask returned. For more than a decade we've tried. Now we can only make plans for when he can't control the demon anymore. We'll make sure that when he does, that there is someone who will seek the Empire's best interest. Amira shook her head. Dangerith was stronger than that thing that vied for control of his body. Amira had to believe it, needed to believe it. Could that be you? Vesha asked quietly. Could I trust you? Perhaps you can find a way to free yourself of your curse. Take vengeance on your mother and her people. Amira's jaw clamped shut and she looked away. Don't try to tell me you don't want to, Vesha crooned, her voice stroking seductively along some coiled and hissing part of Amira's soul. They left you to your father, and the curse he locked around your throat. Oh yes, I know all about your father's bargain and how he begged for Emperor Tristan to let the Qadrahan save you. You think Darrigan keeps secrets from me? With the man only 2 steps away, Amira wisely did not reply. You could be powerful, Amira. Even more powerful than me. You want someone more powerful than you. Amira frowned. I want the future of this empire to be greater than it has ever been, Vesha said. That requires a leader stronger than any there has ever been. Amira pressed her mouth into a line, considering. She only half believed Vesha, but there was too much fevered sincerity in the Empress's eyes for it to be a complete farce. Dangerith is a great leader, Amira said. Vesha frowned at her. Is that your curse talking, or are you besotted with the boy? You don't know me, Your Majesty. Amira stiffened. I've done things. Things I wish I hadn't done, but my curse left me no choice. Like Dangerith. Memories of dead men and women wafted in the back of her mind like a cloud of hot smoke. But the difference is that he fights his curse far harder than I ever did mine. Vesha studied Amira for a moment that seemed to last forever. Your curse will kill you if you defy it. And by your own words, his consumes him no matter what he does. Amira inhaled. Yet he fights. If either of us could break free, it would be him. Of course it would be him, Amira thought to herself. Of course. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but I wouldn't usurp Dangerith, even without my curse. And no, he hasn't given me an order about this. You love him. Vesha spat the question like it was the vilest of curses, unworthy to touch her lips. No, Amira said quickly, a little too quickly. Love was that thing Fonra did with smiles and gentleness and kindness and all the things that had been beaten out of Amira. Or perhaps those things had never been in Amira to begin with. Perhaps they had been bled out of her on a stone floor in the tower of the Istavari sorceresses. Vesha's brow furrowed as if she had expected a different response. Don't you want to marry him? I'd wager every unmarried woman in the Empire does. Some of the married ones, too. Amira frowned. She hadn't considered the question. I am going to marry him, if that's what you mean. She'd resigned herself to that fate some time after their arrival in Manadra, though she couldn't say when. I mean to serve him well. She hesitated, mind flickering over the broad implications of that statement. In whatever capacity he chooses. She didn't know of any Qadrahan that had been married or lovers to their liege lords, but it must have happened before. There had been too many of them over the course of history. Odds were this wouldn't be the first time. Vesha persisted. Yes, but is that what you want? Amira looked away. I don't know. She was barely worthy to be his assassin, much less his wife. I don't deserve Dangerith. Amira thought to herself. But I definitely deserve Ka'is. Vesha watched her for a long time and said nothing. Darrigan and the guards remained silent as they had been during this whole conversation. Amira could gather nothing from their stoic silence. We must have you fitted for your wedding dress soon, Vesha said, a flippant tone back in her voice. I'll have my maid Sylvie send word to the tailors in the city to expect us in 2 days. She hooked her arm through Amira's again. Come, darling. I know your bridegroom is eager to see you. They walked through the palace and didn't speak another word of Sithraul or curses. But Amira couldn't help but feel as if the slitted eyes of San Thi followed them.